Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religion. And again, Meagon Christ. And we're just going to find out what happens. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very, very good. It's been an interesting week. It's been a nice week. I've been spending a little more time with family and friends. I made like a Thanksgiving week. And so I've enjoyed that. Just got a new job, so I'm happy with that as well. A little more stability, a little bit less contracting work and freelancing work, and just something steady through the winter. So very happy about that too. How are you?
I'm doing better than I deserve. Truly, I'm overpaid and underworked, and life is just entirely too easy for me. I can easily say that since I started this spiritual walk in 2012, my life has been continuously better and better, and I'm happier and happier. Of course, I'm not the kind of happy that's bubbly and silly. I've never been that guy, but you know, I'm just deeply happy. I'm deeply contented. And being in that situation has really made it easy for me to be detached from harmful things in my life, you know, and I don't like to talk about it too much because I get misty, you know. Like it doesn't make for good conversation when I start getting choked up and then I don't talk. That's not the best conversation in the world.
We'll dedicate a whole video and just warn people ahead of time that we're going to talk about the more emotional stuff, and then people can join along if they want.
Right on. We'll entitle it "Bearded Guys Cry."
Yeah. Oh, they'll love that'll go viral. Tears in the beard. Tears in the beard. I like that. That's got good branding.
Yeah, that's even better. That's catchy. All right. Okay, so you said you had some stuff that we could talk about, and go ahead, man. It's all you.
So this one is actually dedicated to a friend of mine who we've been talking lately, and they had one of those difficult dreams that you and I might refer to as, you know, a satanic, evil auntie type dream, where you get the situation where it's not like you have a fear of bugs and you have a nightmare about bugs. More like it's a really strange dream that you can't put your finger on, but you feel this like permeating evil feeling. And so when she described her, I'm sorry, the person is non-binary. So when they described what they were going through, there was the hint of something different, because there was nothing like spiders or car accidents or anything like humanly scary that would evoke any sort of energy like that. Okay. But there was this person had always had this really cool symbol that meant a lot to them. And in the dream, it seemed that the symbol was being desecrated. Right. And so to me, the first thing I thought was, oh, well, that's Satan or the evil ones or whatever we want to call it. Everyone has a different version of that, trying to destroy a symbol of their peace and happiness, a core symbol of their peace and happiness. And so I kind of wanted to get your interpretation on it. Actually, it looks like they're here. So I'm sure they want to hear what you have to say about it. Shout out to Ray, by the way. But sorry if I've given too much information. I might be talking too much. Just tell me to shut up if I am. But anyways, I'd give them some advice, but I wanted to hear what you had to say about it.
I think peace and respect to Ray AA. Not sure how to say that. I have had people talk to me about dreams a lot in the last 9 years. And what I find to be true is that no person, no psychologist or anything like that, no matter how much they've been trained, can say that there are standards of human that certain symbols are going to mean certain things. So bearing that in mind, and all of us individuals, all of us very special and different, the important question to ask is, what does symbol A mean? What does symbol B mean? What does symbol C mean? You know, because I had this one guy tell me the story that he had just a really obscure dream about a blender and was mixing up some certain concoction in a blender. And he found the whole thing to be very loving and warm and comforting, and he couldn't figure out why.
Interesting.
But when I started asking him things like, well, what kind of blender was it? Oh, it's the blender from my childhood. Well, that's important. And he didn't say that up front, you know?
Yeah.
I say, well, when you think about that blender from your childhood, what was it for? Like, what was the purpose of that blender? Oh, mom used to make me smoothies. You see, now it means something.
A lot more.
Yeah. And through talking like that and talking about what those individual symbols mean to the individual who had the vision dream, you can pretty easily sort out what it was actually about. But you have to get them to recall things that they find important about the dream. That is what I find is the key to it. Mm-hmm. Peace and respect, bigzebra.com. So I don't think there's anything that a person can do without talking to the individual who received the vision or dream and really digging into what it means. And sometimes that involves getting deep into their memory and getting them to recall things. And sometimes those things are not comfortable.
Yeah. How often?
So it can really be, it can be like a kind of a regression therapy at times.
Yeah. So I've heard this from Muslims. They say when you have certain nightmares, they say what you need to do is get up, say a prayer, turn to the other side. Now, I was wondering what you think about how often is it that we have these sort of dreams, like you said, are just digging deep into our own subconscious, and they may just be uncomfortable ideas, and that's the reason we're feeling like it's a bad dream or a nightmare, as opposed to possibly an incarnation or inception of a negative energy, negative entity, because that's really at the heart of this, right? And I think you and I have had great conversations about this, and we'll continue to do so. Like when they study these indigenous tribes and these tribal people in other countries, especially North Africa, the Middle East, lots of Southeast Asia, where their more superstitious beliefs aren't policed by culture and by legislation, and so they're allowed to talk about the weird stuff that we don't talk about anymore. That is likened to the fairies in the forest, etc., UFOs, all this stuff. Where do you try? Because I'm sure you've had nightmare situations like that. Where do you try to draw the line between, oh, this is just something I have to work through as an individual, and it's actually a good work, it's a God's work, as opposed to this is just out of left field, coming in hot, perpendicular to my purpose, negative energy, kind of like when you hear the voice of God in the daytime and you hear the whispers of the evil. Where do you delineate or draw a line between what is just your own trauma resurfacing or your own trauma resurfacing and something taking advantage of it?
So I tend back toward the idea of detachment from self and the idea that I have something to learn, so that no matter what happens, I can learn something from it. As long as it's something new, as long as it's not a repeat occurrence.
Uh-huh.
And maybe a repeat occurrence is something that needs reevaluated anyway. But, you know, when you come to that confident position that you're sure of what a thing means, well, then you're just getting repeats. Now, as for me, my brain, non-vision things, which are blurry and foggy and weird and stupid, and or maybe they're just like sexual or, you know, whatever like that. Just mundane human stuff. That stuff tends to repeat and be the same thing again and again and again and again. And it stays foggy and I don't remember it well. And that's one of the reasons I differentiate between dreams and visions, is that it seems that in visions, I have better than perfect eyesight. I have better than perfect vision. I have better than perfect recollection of it. The colors are brighter. The sounds are brighter. Everything's cleaner and crisper. And I can't seem to forget them. I can have a vision like that, take notes on it, walk away from it for 2 years, come back and write the notes over again, open up the envelope where the other notes were, compare the two, and they'll be precisely the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which means it's not my memory, and my memory isn't, it's more important than my memory. It's bigger than that, you know, and it's better than that for that matter. Yeah. When I do that in real life, I mean, think back to your notes in school of things that you had to take notes on, and then try to wait a year and think about what you wrote. Go ahead. I dare you. You're not going to remember crap of what you wrote.
So you read it again and it starts jogging those memories.
Right. But with visions, I don't seem to need my memory jogged. The recollection seems perfect and right there in the front and easy to bring. So whether it's a negative thing or a positive thing, I'm going to learn something from it. And maybe I'm going to learn about my weaknesses, how I can be taken advantage of, what I can do to prevent that. Because if something comes at me like you're a piece of crap, well, I happen to think that there's no humans that are pieces of crap. Mm-hmm. So why would I want me to believe that I'm a piece of crap?
And why would you follow something that would want you to think that? Right.
On the other hand, there's constructive criticism. You know, where like in your experience, Goddess comes to you and says, okay, well, you know, you need to correct this, this, and this. You need to apologize for this. You need to ask for apologies for these things. You need to let these people go, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Here's some fundamentals to straighten out your life and make it easier for you. You know, stuff like that. Now, do I like to hear you're wrong? No, I don't like to hear that. Nobody likes to hear that. Yeah. But is it constructive or is it demeaning? You know?
Exactly, yeah.
There can be really, really scary, upsetting things that are constructive.
Yeah.
Things that maybe I'm having trouble facing up to something. Maybe it's an observation about myself that I don't really want to hear, you know? But as long as it comes across with the attitude of productive and confirming and edifying, things like that, then I'm totally willing to listen. So that's the I could say the genre of visions and dreams that I experience.
Yeah, that I've always struggled with that, right? And even up until recently, and I still do struggle with it, where I'll have a really messed up dream. It'll seem mean and hostile, and sometimes it's broken me. I've been stuck for a month on a dream that I felt was very real and very true. And although it took me a very long time to get over it, being on the other side of it, I am happy that I was told. Though in the time it felt nightmarish and even evil, but looking back now, I'm like, I guess I'm happy because now I'm someone who fears even less the idea of dying, for instance, right? Because I've talked to people about these primal fears. The fear of death we always thought was the worst, and I would disagree now after having those dreams. I says there are far greater fears. There's a greater fear, like if you die and your spirit does live, but your spirit's in prison, for instance, and God hates you, that's much more scary than just dying. Because
that's much worse.
Eternal fire, this idea of hell. And so there are...
Well, I'd like to talk about the eternal fire anyway. Mark, if you don't mind and you don't think me rude, there's something going on that I kind of should tend to.
Comments?
Well, yeah, a friend of mine, a man I love, this one guy has informed me of something going on, and I've been trying to arrange this talk with Jesus is Lord for actually more than 8 months.
Yeah,
and then he scheduled one on his channel, and then I had to work late and I couldn't make it, and he's made a big deal out of it. And now my friend, this one guy, is informing me that I'm supposed to be on this other show in 30 minutes. I'm not going to, but I tell you what I am going to do, if you don't mind the interruption. I'm going to share my email.
Okay. And I wouldn't mind if you want to jump on this, because you and I do this once, twice a week, and I would just go.
No, I am not jumping through hoops for this guy who is just rude and dismissive and calling me names, and I'm not doing that.
It's like a debate style, huh?
Yeah. So I am going to share my screen. Here is my actual present time. That is my emails. Okay. Now, if you look, there is nothing there from Jill, from Jesus is Lord. There's nothing there at all.
Yeah.
Which means I didn't get an invitation to the show even right now. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what he did last time too. He didn't inform me when the show was going to be. and then expects me to, I don't know, magically quit work with no knowledge and come and do the show with him. So,
yeah. Hey, invite him on this show. We'll have him over. That'd be a good conversation. I can only imagine.
I've had him on my show, and that's why he's so angry with me.
Oh, okay. Tell him I'll be a rep.
He had it, and I don't want to talk about Jesus is Lord all night. I really don't. I mean, he's one of our brothers. He's a child of God, just like all of us. He's got his own issues, and that's okay. I accept him as he is, but I'm not going to jump through hoops to make him happy, to make him feel like he's better than everybody else. I'm just not doing it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I feel you.
Okay. Love to do a show with him. I've been trying to do it for almost a year now. Trying to do a second show. The first show that I did, he has a tendency to like move the goalposts constantly, so he doesn't have to answer to anything. So he can just keep challenging.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's obviously deeply prejudiced against black people and women.
Oh.
And he's very, I don't know. I think the man's angry, basically. Not that I wouldn't talk to him for that reason, but when I had him on my show, he found it quite embarrassing because I wouldn't let him change the topic. I kept him on topic. I made him like justify his statements.
Yeah.
I made him listen as I justified mine.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a small atheistic group who started calling me, because the guy is just known to be impossible to talk to. There was a small atheist group that we interact with in this Christian group community, and they started calling me the Jill Whisperer, and he really didn't like that. So he got really insulted and angry, and now I have to put up with the crap like you're seeing right now.
So what do you think his like what's the primary position that like he came in with? I'm sorry, is it a he?
Yeah, he identifies as male.
Yeah, so he came in with that, and you came in with, or I'm sorry, what were the positions you guys came in with that were like that you started this debate with?
No, we just did a Bible study.
Oh.
It was an open conversation Bible study.
And it got to who and when is Jesus, right?
Well, I find that young earth creationists, misogynistic, way too proud of your group people tend to ignore certain parts of the text, and I started pointing them out.
Yeah.
Like, how can you call someone names and say, I'm a follower of Christ who said, love everyone as yourself? Like, how, are you doing that if you're just hating on folks?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about my TikTok for a while, where when I had made those announcements and I started saying, hey, maybe the Jesus story was flipped on its head, and he was a man who became God, not a God who became man. And people lost it, said I was a Satanist, I worshiped the devil, I was a false prophet. And I said to him, I says, folks, you're not even giving me a chance. And it says, would your Lord be happy with that? And the reporting, when I wasn't actually violating any of the community standards, is very unchristian-like. And I don't mean to, like, I'm not trying to be one of those sarcastic jerks like, that's very unchristian-like of you. It's not like that. It's more like, right. Really, it's actually unchristian-like of you. And I'm not sure how you're having this cognitive dissonance right now.
Yeah, I don't understand. Oh, and here, just in case, here's my trash folder. He's also not in my trash folder. I haven't thrown him away.
Well, one day I'd like to see that show. He sounds like the religious Tom Jump.
Oh gosh.
I don't mean to characterize. I don't even know the person, but
no, Tom, you're right. Tom Jump does the same things. He makes assertions and doesn't back them up. He shifts the goalposts constantly, and then he calls the other person he's debating with names.
Yeah, Rich, you and I both know time and space don't exist. They're not actual things.
Well, if you need them to not exist, fine.
Anyway, so I'd like to talk about that for a little bit, because I think that's super important. This idea that nothing against any atheists or nothing against any religious folk, but we do find quite often that people who hold those positions also hold resentment, anger, confusion, and these sorts of things, which is fascinating to me because it's so much more simple than that. It's not enough that it's just, well, obviously you shouldn't have negative emotions attached to your philosophies. More importantly, those philosophies seem to have very, very clear cut and dry code of ethics and means of operation. And if you just followed those things, it'd be quite simple. Christianity, for instance, how do we get the chauvinism and the racism and xenophobia and religious intolerance of other religions and this very hypocritical, cognitively dissonant behavior amongst the followers, when it quite simply, Christ is quite curt and it has brevity and is very clear and precise with what he thinks people should do to conduct themselves. And people get hyper focused on, you need me to get into the gates of heaven, and they have no focus whatsoever on, be with the poor, be with the prostitutes, understand that all human beings have live a hard life and that we should all be considerate of them, have tolerance with all of your peers, regardless of what they look like and how they think, and all these sorts of things. How is it that it gets lost so much? Is it A, they don't have the actual fortitude to live as this religious person they're claiming to be? B, the propaganda and brainwashing by the institutions, the hierarchy, for possibly a more like conspiratorial reason, or C, something else, or D, all of the above? What do you think?
I think it's D, all of the above, really. I mean, okay, nobody wants to be wrong. Of course you want to be right, so you find people that agree with you and confirm that you're right. But that's tribalism and prejudice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we tend toward tribalism and pride. And we tend to exclude others as being worthy of respect, of respect.
Yeah. Because
we're doing that. And all that's totally natural. We just need to realize we're doing it and quit doing it.
Exactly.
And then you have the institution itself, your church or religious leader. And they're just adding to it and making it worse, telling you how all these other people are wrong and how they're all going to hell. In some cases, not all preachers preach that. Not all teachers teach that. And in fact, if you get into the Eastern philosophies, it's actually, yeah, they're not like us. And yeah, they don't think the way that we do, but that doesn't mean they won't be led to God.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Well, so there's this caricature of God, though. Speaking of that, and you and I have this really, really very specific explanation of what God is, and we have a different type of Trinity, right? We have this idea of all things that are and ever will be are maybe some sort of God force, right? I know, I'm not sure how much you ascribe to that idea, but I'm very much of the idea that there's a Brahma, basically an all. Right? The conversation we're having, what makes up our entire bodies, what makes the cosmos spin, all of it, the father / mother of the ancestor race, the founder race, whatever caused all things to be. Then, of course, there's our local intelligent gods of creators within our universe. You and I would theorize are actual aliens. And then there's that human psychic God, right? That culmination of what we believe and think. And when you have these religions like Christianity, which says we believe in the one God, the true one God, but then they add on all of this list of requirements, it excludes people, and it makes it less accessible to people. Like, for instance, homosexuality is a huge one, right? Because they take that one line from Leviticus or wherever it is and say, this is a big thing. It's really bad for you to be this. My mother's a Christian and she taught me, she's like, it's not your business and it's not up to you. Whatever God decides, you treat those people with respect, right? And so now those people look at the idea of God, not just Christianity, not just the modern interpretation of Christianity, but because they were claiming they knew the true one God, they've also not filthied the rags of God, but put a filthy veil in front of him. And so anybody that wants to have a personal relationship with the true Lord sees what everyone's yapping on about, and people who are possibly like the chauvinism, right, is going to push women away. This homophobia is going to push people who are of the different sexuality away, when God is something so much more beautiful and perfect and pure, and it's for everyone. And they really messed that up, so like, I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
I have a lot of thoughts on everything that you just said, which was to me like 5 different topics. But
My apologies.
I break things down that way, but I like things to be simple for me, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to address the idea of the text calling certain things impermissible, especially the Christian text, and Christians claim that it's saying certain things are impermissible. Mm-hmm. So it's really funny to me, and I mean funny like humorous, like ha ha.
Yeah.
That they're taking it literal in the wrong way, if you will, when they see things like homosexuality is an abomination against God that's unforgivable. Okay, and you have to become not a homosexual to accept God or for God to accept you, and they make assertions like that. Which is really odd and funny to me, because it's obvious to me the text chose the most mundane things that we shouldn't even care about and is none of your damn business to talk about things that are important. See, this is the same way that we learn all things. Like you don't take a small child and neglect basic math and put them directly into trigonometry, because it's never going to make sense without basic math. And the reason that we teach things in a certain order is because human beings need memory hooks. You need the foundational ideas, and then you hang something on that hook, and then you can hang something on that hook. And that's how we build understanding and how we learn things. So the Bible uses the most mundane things that are true in real life to make example of things that actually matter, that we don't already know.
Yeah.
And if we were born already knowing everything about our spiritual experience and what it means to be a human, and our condition, and the dichotomy of, the dichotomy of being human, for goodness sakes. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. So it uses stuff we already know, and I would give you an example. Where in the world and when in the world were there no homosexuals? Okay, so there's always been homosexuals everywhere.
I would assume so, at some level and in some way.
Absolutely. Okay, you know how we like to label stuff so we can talk about it?
Yeah.
But the reason that the word homosexual, which is a medical term based in Latin, which means same sex, as in attracted to same sex, that's what it literally means.
Yeah.
The reason it sounds so cold and chemical is because it's not real words. It's a medical term.
Okay, yeah.
That's why it seems kind of impersonal, and why we've come up with different terms and individualized it, such like that.
Word. Yeah.
Okay, so that word was coined by a psychologist in the early 1800s. I think it was 1831. Now, before that, there was no such word in anyone's lexicon, but there was still homosexual. So other people before that had terms that they used to mean homosexual. So let's go back to the ancient Near East. Do you know what a eunuch is?
A man without his parts. Is it just referred to a man, right? A man without his parts.
Right. They from very nice, upstanding, trusted families. They would select one of their younger boys to be castrated at about 8 years old.
Wait, why did they do this?
Well, first of all, he came from a good family. It was an honorable family. It was the family had to be respected in society already. They'd cut off his testicles so he would lose some of his sex drive and get as big as possibly he might. Same reason we castrate cows.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
That's still messed up, but it makes sense.
Well, he's still very much a male, but he lost all of his sex drive. He's not going to get anybody pregnant ever.
And
it's
like the army in Game of Thrones.
What's that?
It's like the army in Game of Thrones. They call it Unsullied. They make them all eunuchs because then they only focus on war and battling. They become the best warriors. It's a show,
Well,
but
that's not completely untrue of humans.
Okay.
Now, it's a barbaric practice I don't agree with, but just the same, this is how it went down. So the reason they came from a good, reputable family is because they expected that eunuch to become educated, trustworthy, and that the eunuch would become fairly high in society, actually, and in service of kings and high priests and things like this.
Whoa, okay.
They guarded treasure for churches. They guarded harems for kings, all kinds of stuff. It was actually a pretty high position in society. Okay. So there's no need to believe that Christ would think that a eunuch needs special exception to get into heaven. There's no need to think that.
Exactly. Yeah.
In fact, in the history of this world, in the ancient Near East especially, there was a lot of religious eunuchs. Okay. So the 12 apostles, and I'm going to say this 3 times because I think it's huge important. Matthew 19, 10 through 12. Matthew 19, 10 through 12. The context is Jesus is being sharpshooted. Okay.
What do you mean by that exactly?
They're trying to make him look like an idiot.
Okay.
Okay. They're trying to say things that catch him up. I mean, get him caught up in his own words.
Oh, okay.
So, and right after this, the Sadducees, the Pharisees have their shot at it too. But in this case, the 12 apostles are asking a question, and here's the question. If a man is in the case of a woman, okay, let that mingle a little bit.
It's already ringing thousands of bells. Yep. Is
it good that he should marry? Of course, that would mean traditional marriage, like marry a woman. Jesus don't answer the question. He answers the larger question that they didn't ask. Maybe they didn't feel gutsy enough. So he says this. He says, some eunuchs, first he says, this saying is not for all, but for those who would receive it. In other words, it's gonna have to either apply to you, or you got to be really open-minded, or you're going to argue with what he's about to say. Okay, if you're closed-minded, you will argue. Yes, that could be poisoning the well, but not in this case. It's actually true. So he says, some eunuchs are born of the womb. By definition, eunuchs are not born eunuchs. So already he can't be talking about a eunuch.
Okay.
All right. He says, some eunuchs are made eunuchs by others. Eunuchs were not physicians performing castrations. That was the job of the priest. Okay, so that's not true of eunuchs. He said, yet other eunuchs choose to be eunuchs. And then he finishes it with this. But for the kingdom of God's sake, if one can receive the good news, if they can receive the good news, let them. In other words, Jesus is saying these quote-unquote eunuchs can go to heaven, or else Jesus is just a tease. Yeah. Now let's talk about the ancient Near East and what word they used to describe a homosexual. You want to guess? Eunuch.
Really?
A man who's not a man, wink, wink.
Oh. Well, how do they differentiate it from the actual man not having a member?
Context.
Okay. Yep.
Context. So when Jesus says some are born of the womb, some are made by others, some yet choose to be, but tell them the good news, he's not talking about eunuch.
So he's saying the opposite of what everyone's saying now.
Yes.
How the hell did they mix that up? Or did they just purposely mix it up?
Because it's the same reason they're obsessed about lots of stupid stuff that doesn't matter. They don't understand it's a teaching lesson. It's just a memory hook.
How terrible is that? Then, like right now, we just had a discussion, and you, like you said, you just started looking into this. You're a biblical scholar all your life. You were able to show that what
it was obvious.
Yeah, with the entire Christian culture, what is stop laws from being passed or allowed, or people allowing to love and live the way they want to and believing that they're not going to heaven. You just, in 5 to 10 minutes, explain how they actually completely misinterpreted it. And it wasn't even that difficult, because I pulled up Matthew 10 through 12, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, it doesn't say homosexuals aren't allowed in heaven.
No, it doesn't.
Not even, and they're living off of that verse. They had to have almost like purposely lied. They put
no, they're living off of Deuteronomy where it says, okay, let me put this in Christian terms from out of the Christian emotional context. You know what the word infidelity means? Yeah. Would you like off the cuff?
Yeah. So, you're in a relationship where you've made an agreement to be one-on-one with them, nothing sexual, maybe even emotional with other people, and you still do it anyway. So it's a breaking of an agreement through intimacy.
Okay, now Islam calls non-believers infidels. Why do they call them that? Because it's like you're breaking a marriage contract with God.
Interesting.
Okay?
Yeah.
The Bible is doing the same thing, using the same kinds of words in the same way.
So we misinterpreted the word.
So when it says, "Oh, you're a whore," it doesn't mean you're sleeping around.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or the whore of Babylon. Yeah.
When it says you've left your natural estate and now you're a homosexual, it's not talking about sex at all. It's using sexuality, morality, finance, business ethics. It's using these things we do understand to explain something we don't.
Yeah, because like in one sense, you can see the church or belief in God as a union. And so if you stop believing in God and love yourself, that would be a form of like homosexuality.
It's just that simple. It's just that freaking simple.
Can you believe it though? And that simple misinterpretation.
But they want to hate.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to feel special. They want to have that kind of ethnic pride that comes with. Yeah. Well, it's not exclusion so much as it is superiority and being included in a special group.
Yeah.
I mean, is Gucci such a good product? It's just the highest quality product, and you can't buy better than Gucci? Of course not. It's all about wearing that Gucci label.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's what Christians are doing.
And it's a shame, because if Christians really operated at the highest level of Christendom, at the highest levels of godhood, man, they wouldn't have to try to be Gucci. They would shine like they would be the Gucci brand just by the way they walked down the street and treated people. And that's what would be exceptional about it. Not that it's an exclusive group.
Yeah, you would know them by their fruits.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what the text that says that they should be exemplifying and how people will recognize them. It's
almost laughable, right? Because like you said, you look at Strong's exhaustive explanation. Richard had mentioned last time, there's a lot of great resources where you can look. If you don't mind repeating them this time around, because I have Strong's loaded in there. There's these 2 types of reference manuals that will help you understand the context of the Bible, and also the etymology of words to their most the farthest back we can go to understand the original meaning. And if you sit there with those 2 books, you're going to flip the Bible on its head in your mind, and you're going to see it as a completely different document altogether. And such a shame. It's like Popular Science versus Science Magazine, right? This idea that preachers, pastors, mega pastors, all these things, they're popular Christianity. Then there's real Christianity, or real Abrahamic religion, however you want to refer to. And how mind-blowing is it that is what predominates, is this angrier, this greedier, and the Bible says, and the Lord says this would happen, but you still can't, I still can't wrap my head around that's the path we went down. The other one was so much better. And
we didn't have a choice, brother. We didn't have a choice. We have been misled by negative forces that really don't like us. I mean, okay, what's better? Everyone working cooperatively or divisions of infighting? What's better? That was obvious. What's better, lies or truth? What's better, hatred or acceptance? What's better? I mean, come on.
Yeah. And then you have,
why are we participating in any of these things at all? Makes no sense to what we are intrinsically as an animal.
0 sense.
Like, and what? Like, we wouldn't all have enough wealth if everyone made everyone else prosperous? No. I mean, the US was once self-contained and it didn't trade much with other countries. And was one of the most prosperous places on the planet because everybody worked and everybody took care of their own. And there weren't homeless people. There weren't people starving in the street. None of that was happening. In fact, we all had too much money.
Yeah. And you think about Germany prior to Hitler's crimes. Germany isolated itself completely, kicked out the global banking, and they skyrocketed in prosperity. This is when Hitler made Man of the Year before he lost his mind. He did a lot of good stuff for the country before then. I'm not making a judgment on Hitler's ultimate character. I'm saying the policy changes they made to isolate that country and kick out all those nefarious elements gave absolute prosperity to the country, almost like it happened overnight. So we know that the switch can be made. And people will say that the nature of people is wrong. People suck. We're destroying the environment. Puppies are better, whatever it is. And I know you and I sit here pulling our hair out because we know the stories from the Renaissance. We know the stories from the height of the Greek Empire and the height of the Roman Empire. We know the stories from the 1950s. It was nothing like today. And we know it's social engineering. The human being is, I believe, is neutral to positive naturally all the time. I'd say you agree. Abraham Maslow broke the mold on psychology, and then he was buried by popular science. So we didn't even get to hear any of this. There's this constant inundation that there's something wrong with us. And it's so absolutely crazy that we just would be the only species that would be self-terminating. There has to be some other sort of conspiracy. I tell people there's either two or more species of humans, and one species does not like the other one, right? Or there is some other parasitic element that is living in our society and feeding off of our suffering.
Well, when I see children well loved and taken care of, they always tend toward indifference and love. That's what they you don't have to teach them to not hate. They don't hate.
Exactly.
It's not a natural part of us.
And
it's not until the mind finishes developing, and then they learn concepts like hate and lying on their own. But that's because the brain finished developing, and now we can talk about prayer.
Yeah.
So no, I don't buy it. I don't buy it that we're intrinsically human or intrinsically bad humans. I don't buy it.
And that kind of goes back to a little bit about how we started this conversation. And this idea that there are whispers. And, people are there's a couple things you and I talk about that people have done in the comments. Nothing against them. They have their criticisms and their respective criticisms and we're talking about. But they basically say, all right, they're throwing their tinfoil hats. One is heaven's a spaceship. Two is Christ is coming back and it's going to be one of us. It's not going to be an incarnation of someone from the clouds that was already here 2,000 years ago. But this third one, I think the most overlooked and contested one, whether I've talked to folks from TART, whether you and I have had a conversation, or whether I talk to any friends, you either get glazed over, terrified look like, I do not want to talk about this, or you get that's crazier than bat shit, or squirrel shit, nuttier than squirrel shit, I'm sorry. And that is, there is an intelligent entity among us that is sowing these seeds. Why we misinterpret Christianity in the ways we just discussed for the past 20 minutes. Why the Vatican now has a telescope called Lucifer, and they have a whole church area that looks like a snake, right? And has a very strange depiction of Christ in the front. Why they hide all the books in their basement and locked away in their library. why the industry leans toward greed when it never did before. We had a 6-to-1 ratio on CEOs of companies to their least paid individual from ancient Greek times to the early 1900s. And now that ratio is something like 300 or more to 1. This isn't something sustaining. It's very much right now, and it can't quite be explained unless there are bad influences, I don't think.
Yeah, it obviously requires constant convincing.
Yeah.
We would throw these things away if we weren't constantly convinced. I want to address Big Zebra and Ray AA or Ra or something like that. I'm not really sure. I'd love to hear that said.
I think it's Ray AA, but that's my
Ray
best guess.
AA. That's cool. I'll say it that way. All right. So yes, Big Zebra is doing a fine job of quoting the text. The misinformation provided by Christians is the trouble in the conversation that I see going on there in the side chat. That if I assume that I'm the intended reader, then those demands and promises are made to me. But every Christian who thinks they're in the intended reader also will admit to you that they will try and fail, which makes their God a fool for writing a book to someone who can't do it. Okay? So if I just want to give God the benefit of the doubt that he's at least good of a writer as Stephen King, or your local mathematician choosing his students, or a martial arts teacher saying, well, this would be a good student, this would not, then let's credit at least that much to God and say he understood his target audience. Now, what's the target audience? The one who succeeds. But who's the one who succeeds?
The Christ.
Not even the 12 apostles. Just the Christ. Now, could Christ be castrated? No. Christ would be born in a time where they stopped castrating. Could Christ be a woman? No. Much of this world is very male-centric, very against women. They won't listen to women. You couldn't have a worldwide hero that's a woman, even in today as advanced as we are. You can't have it. Could he be from some minority group? Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Okay? In other words, he needs to be super, super average. And male. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. Needs to be male. He can't have a crippling disease. He can't be physically deformed. He can't have been in a car accident and had his arm removed. None of that stuff's going to work. Okay? Which is why Christians twist their ankles all the time and die in car accidents all the time. Religious folks all over the world are subject to these kinds of things. And yet the Bible says, I will put my angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. They will bear you up in their hands. So you won't even dash your foot against a stone. They can't be talking about everyone. It doesn't work. Not at all.
Because people have gotten hurt. People have been born with deformities. Yeah.
But could the angels manipulate people and make suggestions to the Christ and to those around him to keep him safe? Sure. Shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be a problem at all. Because God could say to him, actually, don't get in that car with your friend because they're going to die today.
Yeah.
So yes, in the quotes, and yes, in all that, and yes to the objections to those quotes. But all of the objection, all the problem with that is based in a Christian reading frame that can't be true according to the Bible.
Yeah, so I think the misinterpretation here is a lot of what's read in the Bible. People are thinking they're preambles to be for any individual to make it into the kingdom of heaven. What they're really talking about is the actual known description of what the Christ will be like and look like, because they already know who that person is.
Right. Right.
Right.
So is he going to be a eunuch? No. Will a eunuch ever be raised to the highest position? No. Why? Because only Christ is raised to the highest position.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why.
And so it's not exclusionary for any individual.
No, of
that
course.
God doesn't love them. It's, we already know who the Christ is. We're telling you so that maybe, like, so that person reading will know they were Christ, maybe, or know that they fit parameters and will help them on their path. Or maybe even that the Bible will be referential in the future when people doubt the Christ, and the Christ will say, look upon the text and you will see I am there. You know what I mean? Just to let you guys know, this is how you're supposed to be reading it. I imagine you, for instance, will be one of those folks that when the Christ arises, you'll say, guys, check this out.
Yeah, this is the Christ right here. This is it.
Yeah. This is what that really meant all this time. You guys were confused. They weren't saying that you won't be able to go into heaven if you're a dwarf. It just said that Christ will be a regular height person, right? Like you'll be there to explain to people. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's not like God has anything against dwarfs. It's just the Christ happened to not be a dwarf.
Here's the problem with the Christians saying stuff like you got to be perfect to go to heaven. Here's the problem with that. Show me a perfect person.
Yeah. Or show
which one of these
said that humans were perfect.
Right. Or asked us to be.
Exactly.
Or put us in a position or in an environment where we could be.
Yeah.
You know, we have the ability to make vitamin C, but it's turned off. And we have the ability to make vitamin D, but it's turned off. And what does that mean in real terms? You have to eat citrus and you have to get some amount of sunlight. Did you know that sunlight particles from natural, ordinary sunlight at normal elevations, there are certain particles that run totally through your body and chemically dispose of parts of your DNA?
Wait, what?
It actually kills you. You have to have sunlight and it will kill you.
So is that like forgot what that's called. Isn't there like a special name for it? Like the deterioration of objects due to like sun, like radiation and stuff?
Yeah, we got a name for everything. I just don't know what the name for that particular thing is.
On the tip of my tongue. So yeah, I was talking actually to Ray the other night about this, explaining about how a lot of the junk DNA isn't junk DNA, according to what we've discussed, and that there are these different lines of code that, for instance, synthesize what we thought were essential vitamins and minerals. Essential, folks, meaning it's essential that, like Richard said, you get it through your diet. But that these codons on the DNA, if turned on, those wouldn't be essential vitamins and minerals. You'd be able to create it in your body at the atomic level, possibly just through breathing air and drinking water. And I don't know how familiar people are with the old Atlantean and Lemurian texts, but they discussed this, that back in the day, breathing air and drinking water were the only things humans had to do. Or maybe they were referring to another Earth, as Richard might argue. There's so much of this DNA that's like the suppressor, like you discussed, that there's literally a chemical structure in the DNA that is suppressing our DNA, but we only find it in domestic creatures and human beings. So human beings and the animals they care for and populate, by and large, almost as if, like you had suggested, because human beings live this really easy life, they're able to multiply quickly, and they create these conditions for their domesticated creatures. So they, in fact, will domesticate quickly, and we don't have the foresight to not overpopulate. So the Lord limits our DNA, and it says that in the Bible, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. In chapter 6 of Genesis, yet that man is flesh, his days shall be numbered. So despite the fact that flesh is intended to live forever, I'm making it to where they don't.
And like you said, has anybody lived past 120? Even if they've lived to 121, that doesn't defeat the word.
Well, no one's made it to 130 or even 125.
Wow.
Even with bad records keeping, and maybe they're not as old as they think they are.
And yet we know now, and we know now that there are codons in the DNA that would allow for that, because I'm sure, I mean, maybe you even know what codon it is that allows for the production of telomerase, which is the actual enzyme that would repair all our cells and make them literally immortal.
Yeah. Well, eternal. You don't mind me saying that.
Yeah, immortal, you can't die. Eternal, you don't have to die. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, I want to be very careful what I say. Yeah.
You won't be able to jump off of a cliff and be okay.
Yeah. No, it would still kill you. Yeah.
Unless there's a codon that allows you to have like carbon fiber skin, right, and diamond organs, then yeah. But maybe there is one. Who knows?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know about that codon. Okay, so you're a funny guy, Mark.
I try sometimes.
So as far as and this was 20 minutes ago or more, maybe. I'm not even sure. I lose track of time in these conversations pretty easily.
Yeah.
As far as God as an unembodied mind, and as far as God as a singular intelligent consciousness, and that being what is normally professed by the Christian sects, though not professed by all Judaic sects, where they believe that God has to be outside of time-space. And I'm having this conversation with a few people presently, or we've started into some of that conversation, that other than saying God as the answer to an example, if someone asked me for an example of an unembodied mind, and that would be begging the question. I'm using my proposition to give my answer. There is no example that I know of an unembodied mind anywhere at any time. And besides that, it's not declared in any of the text that they either express it as God has flesh and consciousness, right? Like in Hinduism, where they say these are emanations of the Creator, which would be true if any of them ever did any creating.
Yes.
And by the way, every sentence you form in your mind, you've created something.
Yes.
You don't even have to move to be a creator. It's obviously true. And you decide exactly how to say exactly what you say. And every time you speak, you're a creator.
Yeah.
And every time you create some kind of an idea to present to me or I to you, not only are you a creator, but you're actually changing my brain and I'm changing yours physically.
Yeah.
With words, which is pretty crazy, but it's true.
Yeah.
So that it's always expressed that the highest God is a set of ideals that living fleshly beings participate in, and they're able to act on reality based in these things they agree upon and find valuable. And does that make Ram an iteration or incarnation or emanation from Shiva, from Rama? You bet your butt it does.
Yeah.
And is there anything wrong with that? And is there any reason they couldn't act in reality in those ways? I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah.
Just like I have ideals and flesh and act on my reality. You know?
Yeah. And look, here's a good example in our real life society. It'd be strange for us to think that God or the system, we probably would call it the system of God because we see it as a more complex organization.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and so it's interesting that we think that the system of God is so alien to the way we run systems that we couldn't find examples of sort of the same structure in our society. And for instance, if you go to a company, the CEO isn't the only person that works there and then just puppet strings dolls and mannequins to do all the work. There's individuation, there's levels of hierarchy and competence, right? There's the ultimate creator of the business, that might be the CEO. There's the person who runs all of its systems, which is the COO. And then there's tons of people at various levels that execute the vision and the systems created by those two individuals. So me, it's interesting when people say God is this all-encompassing thing. It's here, it's there, it's everywhere. There's no distinction. There's no roles. There's no systems. The angels sort of have power, but not really. They're actually absolutely controlled by the God person. They're just basically like the way an asteroid follows, the laws of physics and just does what it's supposed to do. None of this makes any sense if you apply it to any of our systems of politics, economy, family systems, whatever it be. And so that's really fascinating to me, because we've talked about, not that we believe totally that we have it all right, but that we're trying to work out the complexities based on the teachings and based on just common sense, damn it, that there's a little more going on here than there's just this nefarious, not nefarious, this sort of ambiguous, airy force, you know what I mean? That's also intelligent, but not intelligent, or not knowing, but also conscious and not conscious. It's like maybe there is a system at play. And I think you've described that quite eloquently, like you're saying with the Shiva, Brahma, Ram. Why is it that every single religion, every single mythology from every single ancient civilization and modern civilization and modern religion and ancient religions all have this hierarchy system where there's this sort of all-encompassing force that creates. Then there's these active local participants who are creators of us, right? And then there's these metaphorical psychological powers which we have as thinking beings. Like, it's all there.
Yeah, I think that it would be simply a matter of time and science that we identify exactly what the human animal is, come up with a set of socially acceptable standards of thinking, of how we think about ourselves. Pardon.
Bless you.
And then, thank you. And then that standard would be obvious and acceptable and objective based on what the human animal is.
Yeah.
And we would all agree on it and follow it. Thus, we would create God through science.
Mm.
But I think that's exactly the case. It's just they already did it. Our ancient ancestors from off this planet, they've just already established that. We don't have to start at square one. It's done for us. It's going to be handed us on a silver platter.
Well, in fact, in many ways, you go ahead.
Just like the technology, getting us off of this planet before we kill ourselves off with the planet, etc., like that.
Yeah. And in fact, in a lot of ways, I think this has been handed to us in a silver platter, right? It's called the Bible. It's called the Book of the Dead. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. It's called Ramayana, right? In a lot of the writings of Thoth or Hermes Trismegistus, however you want to go with it, a lot of this hasn't. And if you look long enough, I mean, I've read alchemical texts. I'm like, oh my God, they're describing exactly how our bodies and brains work and telling us exactly how to live correctly as human beings. It's spiritual, it's emotional, it's intelligent, it's sound, it's sober, it's lucid, it's rational, it's logic, it's scientific. It's everything all wrapped into one, which goes back to your conversations and my conversations with Tart. We're like, no. It's all the same thing. Yes. Science will explain it. Science will explain, but it's not there yet. Yes, but also the religious texts completely are going to agree with you guys when you get there. And you're going to agree with them, and you're going to help them figure out the mistakes they've made in the modern interpretation. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, I'm going to loosely quote it, but I think it's a hilarious quote, and I think it's likely true. Or I maybe even think it's definitely true. Some philosopher not so long ago said, the greatest fear of the scientist and the philosopher is that when they finally top this great mountain and they can see the top of it, the theologian will already be sitting there.
Yes. And I think it's true. And you'll see a lot of philosophers and scientists and all that. They'll scoff at that, right? Because of the mistakes. And we've established 2 or 3 primary mistakes of the modern interpretation regarding people that are homosexual or dwarf, or however the modern Christian church has tried, or Abrahamic churches have tried to discriminate and exclude certain peoples based on things that that who they are, at their fiber of their being. We sat here for like 10, 20 minutes and we're able, that's not what it meant. It meant this. So it's interesting to see that once you really get the right understanding of these religious texts, your mind is blown, because they are books of science. They are books of philosophy. They are historical texts, and they make absolute perfect sense as long as you're reading them correctly, not with your eyes closed or backwards or right to left. Right.
Yeah, I've said this before, but I think it should be said on a regular basis. I think it's really that important.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Well, two more things, unless you have something.
No, go ahead.
I really love that we jumped on a couple of these issues that modern interpretations have made this inaccessible, or in bad taste for certain groups of people. Would you say there's any other group of people that have been largely attacked or excluded from these religions with certain incorrect interpretations of text that you might want to tell them right now? Our God is for everyone, and our God makes no judgment on who you are. What other groups may have been excluded could recheck that verse, and you could tell them what it really means, and see that it's accessible to everyone, and God is not an angry, mean, exclusive.
Well, I don't even find it true that it's quote unquote accessible to everyone. I don't even think it's that.
Oh yeah,
that all of these stories are actually telling the same thing. It's like it doesn't matter what ancient religion that you pick that assigns value to an ancestry returning to rescue us. I don't care which one you pick. They're all telling the same story. I mean, the Christian text says it like this. First, it describes Christ as doing one job and one job alone, and doing that job very well. And then it says he wears many hats. Well, it doesn't mean different jobs. There's only one thing left to take from that: different names. He's called different names in different nations. But then that's what Buddhism says. That's what Hinduism says.
Yeah.
That's what all of them say. So, I mean, I take it like this, and we should start wrapping it up, but I take it like this. If you're a poet, if you really love poetry, go look into the Islamic texts. It's all about poetry.
Yeah.
If you are a person who loves aesthetics, you love the look of things, the beauty of it, wow, go check out Hinduism. Like it is so colorful and beautiful, the whole expression, and it's going to teach you what you need to know. If you're a lawyer, go become a Jew. Jews are like natural lawyers. They're all about rule A, B, C, D, and in that order, and you must do it that way. You know?
Well, how amazing.
So it all depends on what's going to teach you best, but there's a religion out there for you, I promise.
And so to sum it up, to answer my question, you say it's quite obvious it's not excluding anybody, and in fact that was never the point at all. There's nothing in any of the texts that lists any exclusions of people to be a part of the story. They were all talking about a particular person that would come, and I think it's also fascinating that you added that the Jews are more like lawyers, right? I mean, even the language itself, Hebrew is a mathematical language, which is like has proofs and logic embedded in it, so that they can look and say, well, the Messiah, because this is true and that is true, this must be true and this must not be true. So we'll be able to decipher. But then you say, you know, Islam is about poetry or has a lot of poetry in it. Hinduism is very colorful. It's almost as if every religion, which is really just the same religion, spoken in a different sort of syntax, will also help when the Christ comes, because all of those different tribes, so to speak, will be able to do their own analysis in their own way.
That's
to
exactly
verify.
That's exactly it. It's all set up for success.
Wow.
You've been played. We've all gotten played so that we succeed.
Wow. That's crazy. It's wild. Well, it's a beautiful story, right? I do get these weird feelings though about it. It's like, well, man, I still kind of feel like I'm like this actor who was given a script that didn't even know what they were going to be acting out. And then boom, it hits me. It's like, oh, it's a cool story at the end. And we've discussed why the story was necessary. We had to truly understand what we were and what we go through without the wisdom, in order that when we retain the wisdom, we would stay with that wisdom. And we know the travesties of the past.
If we'd had wisdom from the beginning, we'd have learned nothing here. We might as well have just been in heaven. If we had real wisdom from the beginning. Yeah. And I think it bears repeating. I've said this before, but I'm probably going to say it several times. And I'm sorry, Meagon, if you get bored with it, but I think it bears repeating. If you have a Christian tell you that they fully understand the message of Christ and the whole message of Christ, crack open a Bible and look at during Acts when the apostles ask of Christ, they say to him, hey, that was a really cool parable. Would you please explain that? And why are you speaking in parables? And what's going on here? And you can look it up with the following words. I have meat of the word that I have not given you, because you were not ready to eat it, and you are not ready still. Now that's Christ talking to the apostles. If you think that your local Christian understands all the message of Christ, which the apostles didn't even receive, then I think your local Christian has a pride problem.
Yeah. And what does it say in alchemy? It's mind-blowing that's the exact way he says it. In alchemy, it says, meat for strong men, milk for babes. They're not talking about only men. They're thinking men big, strong, babies very little and vulnerable. They're talking about the mind, right? Yeah. So a strong, muscly mind as opposed to a vulnerable, like weak-minded person. They were saying that the meat of the word, the meat of the wisdom, it's hard to chew. It's hard for the stomach to digest, and you give babies milk. And so there's milk wisdom, basic things that everyone's able, and then there's meat wisdom that can wreck your world, that you could like be stuck in bed. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's that rumor that Jimmy Carter was shown what the UFOs were, and he lost his religion and stayed in bed for a week, right? Now, whether or not it's true, it's a good example. Some information about what's going on here, how we're here, the nature of the universe is a little too much for a lot of people. And so, yeah, it's weird though. Christianity uses the meat metaphor, and so does alchemy. And it's quite a coincidence they both chose the same metaphor, or, right, they were all written out of one story or out of one writer, and they knew to make that.
The Bible uses both the terms meat and milk, and exactly in that way. Hinduism uses the terms meat and milk exactly in that way.
It's insane, man. How did this happen if not by some grand articulation, grand wisdom to bestow that same parable across all religions, across thousands of years, folks? Like the math is astronomical for the odds.
Never mind that those people were separated by language and geography and time. Never mind that. Like they literally couldn't talk to each other.
Exactly. Yeah. Like there was no way, whether or not they lived thousands of years apart, or their languages didn't match up, or there was mountain ranges between them. Somehow they all came up with the same exact metaphor regarding the same exact piece of wisdom, which is not everyone can handle the truth.
Right.
Wow. How much more time?
Which is a great Jack Nicholson quote, by the way.
You can. Yeah.
Well, we have until the world comes to an end.
That's
but
true.
For today, I'd like to keep these in chewable chunks.
Okay.
Meat, but small pieces.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are given the meat here for sure.
Yeah.
So
so things you didn't get to say but wanted to.
Yeah. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on the apostles. Now, remember, we're talking in the context of the Christ may arise soon, or already has, and is beginning the work of the Christ. Maybe doesn't even know that the Christ, who knows what's happening with that person. But I'm just fascinated about these apostles. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all them. Are these their real names? Or do they have different names? Do we not know what their names will be? Where will they come from? How will the Christ find them? Or will they find Christ? What roles do they play individually? I was very curious on your understanding, interpretation of the apostles. If you had time now or next time.
We'll just end it with this. This will be fine. Okay. So if I said in the Bible, the whole of the Bible, and I said the prophet, I can't be talking about two people.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Now, let's see. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Joshua. There's a list of prophets, but the Bible says there's only one prophet. So who were they?
They're either the other 23 prophets, or some of the other 23 prophets, or different names for the same person in our lifetime.
So what I think is going on, if it's consistent, what it's saying is this was the perspective of a Christ who did the job of the prophet. And he writes it down. And they call it the prophet Ezekiel. Like literally the books are named the prophet.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's quite on purpose because the book is the prophet. And that person didn't live on this earth at any point.
Yeah.
Which is why there's no history of them. Like, tell me, where are David's children? Or where are Jesus's children? Or what about the apostles? What, they never got hooked up? None of them? None of them had any offspring.
So is Jesus also one of the other 23 that named Jesus or Yeshua? Is that also, do you believe?
Well, that's just a job description. We have no one has any idea what the name will be.
Okay.
Which is why in the text about the Christ, it says, I will give you a new name and I will write the name of my God upon you. That's why it says that way.
Oh, so Christ will get a new name, or Christ will give new names?
Christ will be given a new name.
And how will it be given? By the Lord?
Well, I think it's literally his position in heaven. He'll be named. Well, I think he'll be named what he was originally named on the invention of his spirit. He'll be given back his old name, actually.
I never heard this term, old names. What's that about?
Okay. So although,
by the way, stop me by the way if I'm taking up too much time. You know how I get. You get me on.
I would never stop either. I'm the same way.
Okay.
But truth is, I got things to tend to tonight, and whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's true that through, with, and for, and Christians forget this. The whole thing's for Christ. The whole thing. But Jesus Christ is a set of descriptors saying what an individual does who's able to do it. So has it always been Jesus Christ? Yes, every planet. Has it always been done by Jesus Christ? Yes, the Jesus Christ of the last planet formed the new planet. So it was always for, with, and through Jesus Christ, always. So that has always been true. Mm-hmm. So what the text says about the individual that is the hero for this planet is that he invented the spirit of it, God, as a collective, and those who participate in God as a collective, made the spirit that would be the Christ and stayed in communion with him until he had flesh. This is the term an old soul. He was made when the planet was terraformed. So that's pre-dinosaurs.
The Christ that lives now, or potentially lives now, was
his spirit was formed at the beginning of the planet.
Wow.
He says, I made you and I made Behemoth when I made this earth.
Whoa.
That's how old he is.
Interesting.
So you want to talk about somebody that's born with like that old soul feeling, like that, like wow, man,
like super old soul,
super old soul feeling, you know?
Yeah. Wow. So,
but his experience of that taken away, but not his hunger for it taken away. So he's got like this huge education background and attachment. And then he loses that so he can be born into flesh and innocence and not know who he is, so that he can have an honest experience and become a great king.
Wow. Okay.
And all of that, I think, would be necessary. You couldn't like skip some of that.
So he might feel the essence of this great wisdom that sits with him, but he will not be able to articulate it until a certain time.
Oh, yeah, right. When God shows him what the deal is, when his father shows him the deal.
Well, you've given me 1,000 new questions, but I'll make sure to write them all down.
Well, I'm telling you, man.
For next time, yeah. Well, this is how it always goes, right? We came in here, right? We were like spitballing. What do you want to talk about tonight? I don't know. I got a couple ideas.
The whole thing's too easy, man. It's way too easy. These things just roll.
And it's
the more I keep my mind off myself and the more I try to stay in prayer, the easier it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen, man.
The whole thing to me, it's so funny how much of these truths come out not in religion, but come out in art. Like a couple shows back, we talked about Neo in the Matrix and the recurrence of the genetics that make for the Christ.
Yeah.
And how that would just keep happening and keep happening, which is what the story tells, but it came out in art.
Yeah.
And here's another thing that struck me from art. Actually from the Bible, and then I realized it was expressed in art, not the other way around. So I got this from the Bible. The story of the Bible is the story of the hero or Christ, left for him to find once he has flesh and he's old enough and awakened to it. So he'd be sitting there reading this old text for maybe entertainment purposes or something like that. And then he starts reading the storyline and he goes, wait a minute. I've got 3 brothers. Wait a minute. I've got a half brother. Wait a minute. My mom's name was Mary. Wait a minute. My dad's name was Joseph. How much of this lines up?
Yeah.
And then he'd go through it and go, wait a minute. This is me.
Yeah.
This is freaking talking about me. And he'd be shocked out of his mind.
Absolutely.
This is exactly the beginning of the story, the never-ending story.
Oh, yeah.
It is. It's exactly the never-ending story where the kid's in the attic with this old book and he's reading it and he realizes that he's the one.
Yep. Harry Potter's another great example.
It really is weird
enough.
Spoiler
alert, folks. Get your earmuffs on in case you haven't watched Harry Potter. How does the Harry Potter series end?
I don't know. I only saw the first one.
Would I ruin it for you if I told you?
I know. I'm not going to bother to watch it.
He willingly gives his physical life for all the people in the story, and then is promised to be brought back.
You're kidding me.
Yes, and so he is, and he defeats the Dark Lord.
But if he's got to be brought back before he can defeat the Dark Lord.
And he has to willingly accept being killed. He has to be the one to go there to accept the death by who is represented as the devil. And the whole thing, there's a prophecy, and he finally sees the prophecy. Everyone knows it was him, like all the higher ups, the higher wizards.
They knew
an eye on him, protecting him, but knowing what would happen to him in the end, setting him up essentially as a pig for slaughter. As one of the higher ups say in one of the movies, like, you're setting him up to be slaughtered. He's like, that's just the way it is, folks. The highest angel, you might say, says that. And yeah, the whole thing, it is to me, it's the best modern telling of the Christ story. It's the Harry Potter series.
Who wrote that?
J.K. Rowling, which I was blown away by the amount of. It was like, there's no way she did this on accident. But yet again, we've talked about this. This lies in the subconscious in a lot of ways. It's permeated through, but she had to have known stuff. She had to have done the research.
Must have. But there's parts of that story that are too accurate for a Christian reading.
Yeah.
Like the Bible, there's a line in the Bible Actually, there's several lines in the Bible. There's two occurrences that come to mind directly. Two apostles go to cast out a demon in this man. He's literally like chained to something on the outskirts of town. And the two apostles approach and say, we're so-and-so and so-and-so. And who are you? And the demon replies, I am legion, for I am many. I'm not one demon. I'm several demons. And no, they asked first. And then he asked, well, who are you? He said, well, I'm John and I'm Davy, or whatever names they used. And he goes, I know of John the Baptist, and I know of Jesus, but I don't know you. And it attacks. They go to cast it out. It almost kills them. So they go and fetch Christ to cast it out because no one else could. And the line that demons know the name of Jesus and they know the name of God, but they quake. They don't worship. They quake in fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's just how it really is, that Christ, in order to be tempted by Satan, has to be fully human, or wouldn't find it tempting. Has to be innocent of his position, or wouldn't find it tempting.
Yeah.
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 So yes, I have to totally agree with you. Christ, although intended to be from the beginnings of the earth, has to be made God.
Yes. Yeah. Which makes perfect sense. I've had conversations with people I believe to have been possessed and able to speak, divert the consciousness of the person and speak with the spirit. One, they say very strange things, many things that you can affirm in your understanding and reading of the text. It's kind of scary actually just sit in the room by yourself with one of these things and get them talking. Sometimes they won't talk. Sometimes they're very happy to talk. It's almost like they're just been bored so long and no one's had a conversation with them. And so they have this strange smile and grin. But if you say certain names to them, they get this look. One time I did it, and I was talking to one, and I said, well, and they were talking about their hierarchy. I says, well, tell them, and I said a name, sends his regards. And the person gave me this look, real wide-eyed, looked to the side, and the spirit was gone. And I was talking to the person again. It was just like that. You're right. There's like, they quake to certain names. And so it was really interesting to watch it happen. And, you take it for what it is, folks. What I'm telling you, I could be making this all up, sure. But that's the experience I'm saying that I had. Is very fascinating. You're right. You use certain names with them, they quake. They're gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Can't quite figure out why that is yet.
I think that when the Lord says the word is made flesh, I think that what that means is sound can become material, and that there is a certain wisdom, like you said, they'll be taught a new song. I believe that new song is almost literal. What it'll mean is that when they're taught the new song, when they speak, so when the Christ speaks and he teaches his people to speak it, it'll be as if they can talk in poetry, but a poetry so beautiful in a language so perfect and understandable to all the people that not only will it be able to shift anything in any room at any time, but it'll actually materialize in places maybe beyond the red and the visible spectrum of light, where it actually takes form, where these things live. As Islam says, the genie lives on the edge of fire, which what I mean is that it lives beyond visible light, right? The edge of fire is where you stop seeing fire. The edge of fire would be infrared and ultraviolet. So they say this. And so what I think happens is when you say certain names, you literally create or call upon an energy that was already there that actually physically exists where they are. We can't see it in our normal vision, but it is very real for them. So it's like saying, I'm in a room with someone who's possessed. I have a spirit on them. That spirit's in the room with us. It doesn't exist in our frame of reference, but it's
Right.
there. It can't physically attack us. Maybe it can, but it doesn't seem to be able to. It has to use people. But if I say a certain word or phrase, something else comes into the room and they have to fight with that thing for their actual life. And so that's why I think when you say certain names, if I invoke the Lord God Almighty, for instance, if I'm having one of these dreams where I think I'm being attacked, I say Allahu Akbar. I usually have to say it 2 times, but the second time, it's like the first time I don't say it with enough conviction. If I say it again, Rich, it's like a wave comes through the room and they have to leave. I think I've actually requested to God to be with me, and God is God. When you say Allahu Akbar, you're saying God is everything. God is the most merciful, the most strong. There is nothing you can do to stop him, and he's about to take you out. I think it actually, because we believe it and we say those sounds, it actually manifests something very, very, very real around us, and they have to contend with that in a mortal way. And so just like if a big bully came, or a big guy came in to stop a bully and could actually kick his ass, we take that seriously. I think the same thing happens for them, but all we have to do is make certain sounds the right way.
That's very interesting.
That's my theory. Who knows?
I can't wait to find out everything.
Yeah. Me too.
But with that,
yes.
Me being ignorant as I am, happy to share the experience I've had so far, and you as well, and I thank you. Deeply,
absolutely.
I do.
Quick housekeeping. Steve, Murder Shed Steve from Tart. He can't wait to be on the show and talk with us. He's a little down and out as far as he's feeling a little ill. He's like having his chicken.
I'm sorry to hear that.
His rest. Yeah. I'll send him your regards. But he's almost on the outside of it. But he said he really wants to have an episode with us. So anytime, and maybe even like for us, either way, Thursday's pretty open for me. So maybe we can make this happen again.
Well, with enough notice, I can always quit work early that day or something like that, or perhaps it'll be on a day I'm taking off anyway. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, if he's in communication with you, go ahead and set that up, and let's just make it happen at his will.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Excellent.
I'm totally on board with that.
Cool.
All right. Thank you so very much, Meagon, for joining me with this and having these conversations, for being able to consider things that you don't necessarily believe, which it seems to me there was an Aristotle quote. Oh, yes, there was. And worth looking up and applying it to life and people that you know. Yeah. The mark of an intelligent man is that he can consider things without having to believe them. I pray all of you that you can be more like that. All right, guys. Peace and respect to you all. Thank you all for showing up. Thanks for making comments in the side chat and adding as you do to the show. Thank you all very much for showing up. I hope to see you all again. And as I close, I want you all to know that I truly do look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Good night.
Thank you, Richard. Good night, folks.